That was the first spoon, of course, that we ever made. And I made that one in 1969, actually on the day of the investiture of Prince Charles. Simple initials then, carved with a flat chisel in there. And that was my first love spoon. And that's the story. The Cupid, the lovebirds, little cottage. The idea that you were promising your fiancée a cottage. And of course the Welsh feathers with the words Ich dien, meaning I serve. I didn't know at the time, but the love spoon should be made from a solid block. Well, I didn't know. So the bells are made out of brass. And the birds, of course, they're inserted as well. And then we put a key in a 21, because Jill was 21. And the wedding spoon. We ended up as too rough and too smooth, because when I was actually carving the bowl of the spoon, I went straight through the bowl of one of the, with a chisel, with the gouge. And that's how we ended up, two rough ones, two smooth ones. But that's the wedding spoon for 1971. We use this symbol again, the K and the T and the J inside a heart. We started that one on the 70 spoon, and I had the idea that we would always put those initials on our spoons. And we'd always use teak, so again, teak love spoon. The little well is for Taff's Well, or Fun and Tarv. That's where, of course, I come from. And then Jill comes from Tenby, which is Denbych y Pysgod, a fort or a town of little fish. We've got the leeks and the daffodils, the two emblems of Wales. And we've also put the word Munich with the Star of David and a small cross inside, because of course that was the year the Olympic Games were sadly spoilt when the Jewish people were killed. I wanted to make a different shape of spoon, so I was starting to look around then to see which different shapes I could make. So obviously you could have a triangle, and you got an A and an M inside a horseshoe. So what we were doing, we were sort of recording then major events. Well, of course, Princess Anne was married to Mark Phillips, so you have an A and an M inside a horseshoe. And you've got the idea of the shepherd's crook, you've got the world behind the cross and the world behind prison bars, and you've got the good shepherd being in the middle of the two. That's the idea. At the time it seemed that some people who were attending church didn't seem as close to God as some people that were in prison, and that's why we did that way. You've got a British Leyland sign there, because we bought a new Mini that year, which we took to Belgium, hence the poppy of Flanders. There's a lighthouse there. You can just see the lighthouse in the carving there. That's where I actually proposed to Jill, and it's supposed to represent Roath Park Lake and the lighthouse at Roath Park Lake. It was our cotton wedding anniversary, and there's a cotton reel there, and because I was learning and trying to sort of push my skills a bit further, you can actually thread the needle with a bit of cotton there, on that one there. And again, it's made out of teak, and you see the K and the T and the J in there again. So that's the spoon for 1973. So this is the spoon for 1974, and because we had the idea to record our anniversaries, the anniversary for, it was the number 71, 2, 3, 4, I think it was our third wedding anniversary, and so the symbol for that was leather. So this was actually a leather pendant. I've since put a little brass one in there to hold that cross up, and you see a trumpet at the top announcing the birth of our first child, Matthew, hence the seed inside the cage representing the birth of a child. And you see an oak leaf and an acorn. A symbol like that on a love spoon means you hope that love will grow big and strong. And of course Matthew means gift of God. And then we see a little ferry, a ship or a little boat here. I used to work at Neyland, so I used to travel along the Neyland ferry. And of course that year as well, I think that was the year that the bridge, there was a bit of a collapse of the bridge that they were building at Neyland, but that's what that records. And a move then, we moved from Cardiff to Cold Inn, and of course a brick and a trowel. We were building our house. We bought a building plot, and we had plans then to build a house and a workshop. It's got a little key on it, and it actually fastens like so, and it locks the spoon. So you take that off there, plop it in the lock, and then that allows you to open. 1975, and then it says in wood, and of course you've got, I think flowers was the anniversary for that particular year. So it's a very simple love spoon. You see hinges on that one. I mean, it's not the sort of norm for a love spoon, but again, there are really no rules or regulations. So although we try to make it out of a solid block, it doesn't have to be. You can do whatever you want to really with your tradition. No rules or regs. 1976 this was made, and it's much more twisted. In fact, it is quite a difficult one really, because the twist actually goes right the way through. So it is quite sort of delicate there. And the little anchor as well, I now realise that you should try to make it from one piece if possible. So the anchor was made out, we were putting down our roots, hence the reason for the anchor. And this little heart then at the top to make it more sort of lovey-dovey. So you've got the heart at the top, again our initials, and once more made out of teak. We've got another way to portray the birth of a child. So there are links, 2 links in fact, because it was the birth of our second child, Benjamin. And then we see a crown at the top, recording the Queen's Silver Jubilee, 1977. That was the main national event that year. And then there's a little anvil on the side, because it was our iron wedding anniversary. And you see a little tiny swan, partnering for life. The initials are on there again. Very simple, 1 penny for our copper wedding anniversary.
That's right.
That year. Now we turn it onto the back, and a sad bit on here, an M and an F, Rhodesia. Mary Fisher, an Elim Pentecostal missionary, went out to Rhodesia, but sadly was murdered in the uprising in Rhodesia, and that's for 1978. The idea was to carve out the wood from inside, leaving a bottle shape inside, and you see a little message around the bottle. It says 1979, there's an SOS, a compass which spells the word news, and then a boat or a ship with a flag at half-mast. Now what we were recording, a pop record by Police called Message in a Bottle went to #1 in the hit parade, 1979. And of course, events that happened at sea. It was the International Year of the Child, and that was the emblem they were using, International Year of the Child, the hands stretching down and the hands stretching up. And although it was the International Year of the Child, it was the Vietnamese boat people that we were seeing on the television screens. They were in trouble, and lots of children must have perished at sea, the Vietnamese boat people. Then Lord Mountbatten was murdered at sea. And the third item at sea in the news was the Fastnet yachting disaster. So the message in a bottle I thought was appropriate for that particular year.